This episode is brought to you by Commerce, parent company of BigCommerce, Feedonomics, and MakeSwift.
The user is asking the Gen AI platform these very subjective questions like, what is the best pair of jeans? What is the best exercise equipment? Things like that. And the Gen AI platform is them looking across all types of content to reach a conclusion to serve back to the user. So it's really incumbent on these brands and retailers not to just make sure their own e-commerce storefronts are well optimized, but they're making sure that they're promoting their brand across different social networks, across the larger media ecosystem, so that when people are saying they want this type of product that has this type of feature, they're being picked up versus someone else.
Happy New Year, everyone. Very happy to be back with you all for the next season of Retail Remix. We're less than a month in, and already 2026 is shaping up to be a doozy. But before we completely close the book on 2025, I wanted to highlight a few little nuggets of wisdom from last season that I think will hold us all in good stead as we forge forward into 2026. Think of this episode as your AI overview for the best advice experts shared last year on Retail Remix. Everything from how retailers can become culture carriers to the necessity of learning to do napkin math and what that means. These are some of the most inspiring and insightful moments of the many conversations I had last year. We're going to kick things off with some great advice on a topic I'm already seeing swirling again this year: how to ensure you're showing up in search as AEO and GEO supplant SEO strategy. Adobe Digital Insights' Vivek Pandya has some great data-backed tips on AI search strategy that absolutely bear repeating.
Consumers are looking for speed, efficiency, good background research on what products they're interested in, comparative reviews, all those factors. And the generative AI platforms are doing a really great job of giving them strong results. We're finding through survey research that consumers are trusting these results, and that's what is driving the traffic to these pages. And when we find that they land on these retail sites, they're actually performing better across metrics. Their conversion rate is improving across sites. The bounce rate is better from consumers coming from this source versus others. So there's a lot of implications there around what retailers can be doing to optimize, to facilitate this sort of traffic and ensure that they're getting as much pickup from these Gen AI platforms as they are from other types of sources. One of the things is obviously the SEO practices that they've been doing, for the past couple of decades. Some of those still hold true. You're going to still want to tag and describe your content on your pages effectively. But with generative AI, you're also going to want to own the overall conversation around the category you're in. So are you showing up in top 10 lists around, if I look for the best jeans under $400 or something like that, a top 10 list, how does that track? Where do I rank on that? Because a Gen AI platform is also going to be crawling that type of content around, again, affiliates and the social conversation. That's also important. How much are people talking about your products, giving it strong reviews? So the review counts and making sure that you're really well optimized there, because essentially the user is asking the Gen AI platform these very subjective questions like, what is the best pair of jeans? What is the best exercise equipment? Things like that. And the Gen AI platform is them looking across all types of content to reach a conclusion to serve back to the user. So it's really incumbent on these brands and retailers not to just make sure their own e-commerce storefronts are well optimized, but they're making sure that they're promoting their brand across different social networks, across the larger media ecosystem, so that when people are saying they want this type of product that has this type of feature, they're being picked up versus someone else.
Since we're already on the topic of AI, this seems like a good moment to share a clip from a fun conversation I had with Andrew Bielecki, the founder and CEO of Klaviyo, that covered everything from AI to the potential of extraterrestrial life in the universe. I know aliens are really far afield from retail operations, but the thing is, Andrew studied astrophysics in college, and having that lens to view the world through has actually been really useful to him, and it could be for all of us arts majors as well, as you'll see.
I took this course in college that I wish they taught this to everybody. We should actually run a course inside of this on Clayco if I teach in business school. But it's about like kind of, what I'll call do like napkin math, like kind of, I think a lot of people when they think about sizing, hey, is this a problem worth solving? What's this opportunity? One of the things you get taught in physics especially is just kind of like thinking in orders of magnitude. So I was a kind of astronomy major as well. And so if you think about like reasoning about the distance between objects, say like stars or galaxies, like actually matters quite a bit.
Yeah.
And we just say, it's like, well, it's really, really far. It's like that old Star Wars trailer. It's like, well, really, really far away, long, long time ago. It's like, well, actually, what are we talking here? Are we talking like a light year, 10 light years, 100 light years? Like, and that actually makes a bit of a difference. And so I find a lot of things are similar. People like to, when they're thinking about like, well, how hard is this project? They'll tend to think in terms of these orders of magnitude. Like, is it an hour? Is it a day? Is it a week? Is it a month? It's, 3 months, is a year. And I think actually getting pretty good at reasoning about that matters a lot. And actually, I think I find some people, their intuition isn't great on that. And so sometimes just work on that. So this doing napkin math, thinking in orders of magnitude is actually quite powerful.
Even with all the enhancements AI is bringing to e-commerce, there is something about in-person shopping that simply can't be replicated online. In this next clip, Melissa Gonzalez from the global architecture and design firm MG2 describes what that is and how brands can harness the power of their stores to build enduring connections with their customers.
How do you define value and what is the opportunity of that? And I think that that's relevant across all brands and in a multitude of ways, because it's not just about price. Yes, it's going to matter. And a lot of the times you have to put, when you pay with your wallet, there's going to be certain elements that make you more price sensitive than not. But, I think especially the younger generations, it's no new news. They call bullshit on things. They do their own research. They want brands that will stand for something more than just selling them products. And a lot of that is when they think about value, a lot of them want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And that is a value that a brand can give, right? How are we creating this lifestyle that is meaningful to you and inviting you to be a part of that, of allowing you to be a co-creator in that, allowing you, right, to have a bigger seat at the table in that. And I think they're turning to brands that foster that for them. And so that's one element that I think that people are craving. And also, they want to be in person with each other. They're living behind screens all the time, and that has its value. And I don't think that's going away because there's an efficiency in it. There's access to communities from a global standpoint, right? And you can kind of get involved in conversations at any point. But because of that, they're also craving other things from these in-person elements. And so who's going to help be that culture carrier, and who's going to create connectivity, and who's going to let them live, maybe their better selves through sustainability initiatives or what have you. And I think that's a big element that brands can't underestimate when it comes to importance and how consumers are thinking about brands that drive value beyond just price point. It's that saying that will never go away. Like, people will always remember the way you make them feel. And that has longevity, right? So how are you tying that into the experience, whether it's helping them live their values, whether it's community and culture. And then it goes down to all the way, the most important touch point in the store is the store associate, right? And how you training them up, and how are they utilizing the tools that exist out there, AI, customer profiles, all that stuff, to bring the human element to the otherwise transactional experience and make people really feel seen. And I think when you do that, when you deliver that for somebody, they're going to keep coming back to you.
Retailers are entering a new era, one powered by AI and filled with opportunity. But they shouldn't have to go it alone. Meet Commerce, the new parent brand uniting BigCommerce, Feedonomics, and MakeSwift into one AI-driven ecosystem, connecting all the tools your business needs to adapt faster, scale smarter, and grow with confidence. Commerce's powerful selling solutions help brands turn data into discovery, create storefronts without bottlenecks, and build frictionless shopping experiences that your customers will love. Want to learn more? See how Commerce is powering what's next at commerce.com/retailremix.
One brand that is doing a phenomenal job creating a true connection and feeling of community with its customers is Pacsun. And in this next clip, the company's Chief Merchandising Officer, Richard Cox, explains exactly how they're doing that.
I actually don't think our resurgence has anything to do with nostalgia.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I think a lot of our customers don't really have a good reference point to what we used to be, because we've made quite a transition over the years in terms of who we are, the brands we carry, the partnerships we have, and our mission statement. So there is still going to be that heritage. We are a California-based brand, LA lifestyle for sure, skate roots for sure. But when you take a step back and look at what we stand for as Pacsun and what we represent, the commonality, I guess, from years ago would be just youth and youth culture. But the way we get there and we become a much more purpose-driven brand makes us a bit unique from back then. So, we have partnerships with Formula One Racing, the Metropolitan Museum of Art. We have our own brand in our stores and it says Pacsun on it. These are things that just didn't exist back in the day, and our brand makes us quite a bit different. And so I think we've actually just built a new fandom with younger people over the years. It's been a labor of love and a transition over the last 10 years and really amplified over the last 5, where we're much more fashion and trend focused when it comes to a fashion perspective, and we're much more collaborative with other brands and other companies. I think we look quite a bit different from back in the day, and they don't really have that reference point, to the point where I think some customers actually mispronounce our name. And we've actually had fun on TikTok where we've seen customers do it, and then we embraced it. Those memes where it's, I was today years old when I found out. So there was a moment where it was flying around there. I was today years old when I found out Pacsun stood for Pacific Sunwear, because some customers actually call it Pacsun, like they think it's one word.
Pacsun. Oh, yeah. Interesting. But the real through line then between the Pacsun of yore, that is our day, and the Pacsun now is really just like a really tuned in connection with youth, right? Because that felt true for me as a teen, and it feels very true now.
Definitely that through line with youth. I think we're just sharpening to that focus. And I think today's youth require a bit more than just that. You can't just say you want to connect with youth. They tend to associate themselves with brands that have a bit more purpose behind them. I think we're much more a purpose-driven company. Like I said earlier, our purpose is to inspire, right? And how do we do that? We want to build community and at the intersection of fashion, music, art, and sports. And I think it's created something that's very intentional in terms of the partnerships we develop, the product stories we try to tell. We want to bring people together. And I think today's customer, especially since we say we want to do it through co-creation, meaning bring them into the process, have them help us create some of our product stories, have them give us more direct intel and feedback, and us responding to them directly. I think it's built more of an affinity.
The rise of online resale has been one of my favorite topics to cover over the past few years, and 2025 saw a real tipping point in resale's move from the margins to the mainstream. In this clip, ThredUp's Chief Strategy Officer, Alon Rotem, does a really good job of explaining all the factors that brought that about, many of which look like they will continue to be at play in 2026. And importantly, he also touches on what brands should be focusing on as they look to connect consumers with their own circular offerings.
The combination of inflation over the past couple of years, plus the tariffs, have really hit consumers' wallets in a pretty meaningful way. Everybody's looking to stretch their dollar. And I think, when we talk about resale, we're talking about like the trade down effect. And that means basically people can find the same item for less. I think if you also add in the awakening that's finally beginning to happen with consumers about the way that clothes are made, the impact of throwaway culture, you've got these conditions that have been really good for resale as a whole. ThredUp and others like us, we're a place where consumers can find great deals on a wide variety of apparel. Also, they can feel better about the environmental impact that they're making. I think more recently, the tariffs have been like a real case study for us in the sense that fast fashion companies have had to adjust their marketing spend and they've had to raise prices. So when you kind of have both of those things happening, for companies like ThredUp, that means our advertising dollars are more efficient when we're spending, and that helps us attract more customers. And then because our clothes haven't been impacted by tariffs, it means we have a more compelling value proposition for them as well. And I think when you put that together, it's a pretty powerful offering in the market.
Yeah.
If you think about it, we are selling the same clothes that were manufactured overseas, but because we're sourcing them from Americans' closets, we're effectively domesticating our supply chain. And that's really what makes our offering immune to tariffs. So the de minimis loophole, for folks listening, has essentially been this US trade policy that has made imports into the United States that are under $800 duty and tariff free. And so that de minimis loophole is really like been the underpinning for what has made fast fashion business models really sing and be able to offer consumers these items at such incredibly low prices. And so when the de minimis loophole was closed a few months ago, it really presented a leveling of the playing field for domestic apparel, and particularly secondhand apparel, which is like the most prevalent domestically sold apparel. So when that happened, again, it caused the costs of doing business for fast fashion to go up. That in turn, we observed their marketing spend come down, which made our marketing dollars more efficient by comparison. And they also raised prices, which again made, secondhand by comparison an even better value. I mean, it's our job as brands and as retailers to make the compelling pitch to consumers as to why, they should be buying from us, and for a variety of reasons, whether it's environmental, or it's because we have the most unique selection, or it's just more fun to shop on ThredUp or resell in other places. But I think what we learned with the tariffs and the de minimis loophole is that policy also really matters. And when the government takes steps to change consumer behavior through its policy, it makes a real impact.
To close things out, I absolutely had to share this clip from my conversation with James May and Barry Thomas of Kantar, which puts out the BrandZ Top 100 Most Valuable Brands in the World report every year. Every company knows their brand is important, but just how important can be hard to quantify. And James and Barry offer some really interesting insight into what is driving true brand value and affinity with consumers today.
So the total value of this year's BrandZ Top 100 is a staggering $10.7 trillion. And to put that into context, that's more than the UK, French, and Italian economies combined. So it's a massive number. And what's even more incredible is almost 90% of that value has been created since 2006. So we've been living in an era of huge brand value creation. The other big takeaway from this report, and we'll get on to, I'm sure, is really the power of disruption. And disruptive brands have driven 70% of the growth since 2006. And we've just seen over this period of time so much flux and change in the composition of the rankings, which I really think tells us a lot about consumer and investor priorities. So there are 39 brands remaining in the top 100 that started out in 2006, including iconic consumer brands like Coke, McDonald's, Starbucks, Nike, but also the technology brands like Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, which have all gone from strength to strength. Tech brands really dominate the overall ranking. And that's in large part due to the fact that they've evolved into ecosystem brands that just touch so many parts of our lives. Apple, for example, when we first published the ranking back in 2006, it was the 29th most valuable brand on our list. Its key lines of business were the iMac and the iPod. It was yet to launch the iPhone. And since that time, it's just launched into so many categories: entertainment, TV, music streaming, payments, wearables, headphones, you name it. And today, as I mentioned, it's got a valuation of over $1 trillion. So just incredible value creation from the tech brands.
Look, it's always been about meaningful difference. If you listen to Kantar, if you land on any asset from Kantar, you're going to hear a lot about meaningful difference. And that still is way at the top. But beyond that, I think just 2 points are experience is now a brand asset. Think about that. We always think about brand assets as, it could be your media, it could be iconography, your packaging, but experience, especially for retailers and restaurants and other brands. And that could be your shelf layout. It could be returns if you're a retailer. It could be the associate in the store. Just that's a bit of a nuanced finding, I think. And then also the companies that are investing specifically in brand equity during disruptions or periods of disruptions always come out ahead. Brand equity, you have to continue to invest in it, and turning off your media during difficult times, well, that's not the winning recipe.
And there you have it. That is by no means all of the great insights retail leaders shared last year, but it's definitely some of the ones that I think will be most relevant in 2026. And the great news is there'll be much more where that came from, starting with our first fresh episode of the year dropping next week. So stay tuned. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Retail Remix. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. Until next time, keep mixing it up.